Thanks so much. Those were really, really interesting talks. Very creative as well, which always surprises me when I listen to data talks. So really, really good, really interesting. My first question had been about your sort of career journey and how you started out in data, but I feel like both of you covered that. But just sort of to ask sort of the tail end of that then is, was it always going to be data science or tech? I think you both said kind of no, you started elsewhere, but if you just want to go into a bit more detail about that, and I'll start with Cara, please.
So I was one of those kids at school that found it really hard to decide what to do. I enjoyed languages, I enjoyed music, I enjoyed maths, and went into medicine for a year and then decided that wasn't for me. I was much more interested in people's minds than I was in people's bodies. Psychology, you did a lot of statistics, took the stats, went to the college, data viz. So it's been one of those journeys that, what I'm doing now wasn't an option when I was growing up. It just didn't really exist. And I think that's one of the key things that I encourage people to think about is, what do you enjoy? What are you good at? And the job that you might end up doing might not exist now. And so how can you build skills that are going to be useful for whatever you might end up doing? Does that answer your question?
That does. That's perfect. Thank you so much. Martina, same question.
Yeah, pretty much the same. I've always been fascinated with data. I remember I used to count things when I was a kid. Like I was counting the length of advertisement in Italy. I'm Italian, and so like advertisement has been lengthening in time in TV, and I was annoyed about that. I was trying to demonstrate this because my mom wouldn't believe me, but then it didn't do much with it. I should have done a viz. That would have been fun, like age 6 or something. So I don't know, I always liked the idea of quantifying things and trying to understand things from first principles. But I obviously, like yourself, data science or data work wasn't a thing when I was even at uni, so that tells you how old I am. But yeah, like I wanted to be a researcher actually, so that's why I've done a PhD. I thought, studying practical physics, and I was like, no, actually I want to do something a little bit more applied. And then again, was very lucky. This field starts to be a thing. I was like, that sounds interesting. So,
yeah, I think it just shows it's never exactly linear, is it?
It's never.
So it's quite interesting. One more question for me, and then I'll see if I've got any from the audience. Could you tell us, Cara, first, if you don't mind, any challenges that you've faced as a woman in a male-dominated sector and how you've dealt with them? Any sort of resistance you've encountered along the way?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I feel quite privileged that I haven't really encountered that much resistance. I think I remember being asked the question when I started working at the college. One of the things they asked us was, how are you going to convince people of what you're talking about? And I was very conscious that I was going into meetings where I was interacting with very senior surgeons who had a lot of experience in understanding stuff, and I was often, women were definitely in the minority because of the way just the surgical careers have progressed over the years. And I remember being asked, how are you going to convince them that you know what you're talking about? And my answer was, because it's not about me. It's about the message, and it's about making sure that is rock solid. And so it's not about, I don't want to be getting in the way of the message. And I think that's been a principle that I've stuck to, that if people are questioning why you're doing something, if you can show your workings, if you can show the reasoning behind it, you stand a much better chance of convincing them than if you just go and say, well, just because I say so. That's never going to work. So I think I don't think I can really point to hostility at all on that front. There've been the odd stereotype that they didn't necessarily take the coding side of what I do particularly seriously in other places until suddenly a guy joins the team, and then they're like, oh, clearly you do coding. Like, well, yes, we've been doing it for a long time. But I think it's good to, in all these situations, I think there's assumptions that people come with, and that we can help debunk. And the more open we are about the work that we do, the more we're going to contribute to a field that's more open and equal for everybody. Kind of like what you were saying, that the more of us get involved in data and talk openly about our work, the easier it's going to become.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And same to you as well, please, Martina.
Yeah, I said I've always been very privileged myself. I never encountered outright discrimination, but have I been in rooms where I was the only one looking different? Yes. And did I question that? Not really, because that was the reality. That was what I took, that was just my inner bias as well. Sometimes it's about recognizing, actually, it's not about me. It's about the human beings, and it's actually about civil rights. So I think we should push a little bit more. So again, that's the only thing I've learned with time. Just don't be ashamed. Just I know it sounds very easy to say, but failing and redoing and the perseverance, it will gives you a head start. So it's the only way we can change something. But yeah, I know that it's very hard to give actual practical advice. But I think it's getting better. I'm positive. I think the situation is getting much better, even since 10 years ago, I would say.
Good, there's a positive note there. Right, I'm going to go out to the audience. If you want to stick your hand up, I'll come at you with a microphone. If you've got any questions, please don't be shy. Feel free to ask anything you'd like. Okay, perfect. Bear with me. I'll just go to the hand I saw first, then I'll come to the next one.
Hi, thank you both for your talks. They were really good. Just more of a practical question, I guess. So I find it really overwhelming, just the different tools that are out there. So yeah, my preference is using R, but obviously a lot of people use Python, and then you've got Power BI and all the things that come along with that. And just in your experience, do you prefer knowing lots of languages, but maybe not as in depth? Or are you more of a let's focus on one and kind of stick to it?
Do you want to go first?
I can go first. Yeah, that's one of my pet peeves. Data science is extremely ambiguous, and it's been evolving like growing arms and legs. And I feel like we are probably at this crossroad where it's starting to develop into more sub-branches since a few years ago. So in terms of tooling, it will largely depend on what you end up doing. But for me, it's much more important to invest time trying to understand things from principle again, and just kind of the science behind this. The basic things like basic statistics is fundamental, I will say. Then what language you use will depend on what you end up doing. I was using R when I was at uni, for instance, to do the analysis, and I haven't been using it in a long time. So I wouldn't be able to do what Cara does because I'm just a Python person by habit. And yeah, Python is probably more developed when it comes to some areas, some sub-areas, maybe actually probably the AI areas these days, because people have been developing libraries for that. So if you go into that strand, it's worth investing the time there. But I will say, yeah, just if you're starting, focus on the fundamentals, and then again, train your brain to think about looking at first principle. Everything else will come, because the reality is there's a new package, a new paper, a new something every day. You can't possibly know it all, and I was trying to do that. It's a lost battle. So just yeah, train your brain to think, and it will come.
Did you want to add anything, Cara?
No, I mean, I very much work in R. That's where I am most comfortable. But I think it's like anything. It's like, you know, the languages that we speak. Once you've learnt how one language works and you've learnt a second language as a foreign language, it's easier to figure out, okay, well, those are the mechanics. That's how the Lego bricks fit together. I can try and find out the rules for the next language. So I think I would say don't try and do everything. Focus on getting comfortable in the thing that's going to be most useful for what you're doing. So if you're in a team where everybody is just using Power BI and Excel, you can get really, really good at that. You could also think, okay, how could I do this in R and bring it into Power BI if you wanted to as a next step. And then if you've got big data wrangling to do, you might want to explore Python. So it's figuring out what tool is going to be the best one for the job that you've got to do, that's going to give you the outcome with the path of least resistance. Yeah. And it might not be the immediate path of least resistance. There might be quite a learning curve to it, but it's the path of least resistance going forwards, the one that's going to be most maintainable. And find a community of people who are trying to do what you do using the language that you want to learn to use, because I think learning in community is just a huge benefit when we're doing this kind of stuff.
Thanks very much. I think I had another question from over here somewhere. Does someone have their hand up? Sorry.
Thank you both so much. It's really interesting to hear your talks. You've both got so many projects on. I'm just really curious to hear what you're excited about. What have you got coming up? What are you looking forward to in terms of what's next?
You start.
Yeah, I one of the things I really enjoy about what I do is that no two projects are the same. So if I'm building, I've just finished building a database design system for a research group, and they've showed it to their colleagues, and they're really excited about using it, and that's really exciting. And then at the same time, I'm trying to wrap up another project, which is a Shiny app, which is more to do with tables and getting the data in a way that that is accessible to people. I think the thing that I get excited about across the board in these projects is the impact that it has on making things easier for the end user. And so if somebody comes to me with a project that sounds kind of technically quite challenging and interesting, but that doesn't necessarily do that for the end user, then I would probably question, can we add something in that would achieve that effect? So yeah, I think I'm excited about that. I'm excited about another project that's about to start, which is a data viz design system specifically with end users in mind, rather than just the research team and the immediate consumers of the data, to do with health. And I'm excited about getting started on that and figuring out, how do we find colours that make sense of these metrics and do it in a way that's sensitive? We're talking about humans and in different categories, and how do we find ways to express that in a way that helps people interact with the data well and present it well to other people. So yeah, I'm excited about making people's lives easier, both from the researcher's point of view and from the end user's point of view.
Yeah, for me, it's like anything that comes onto my plate, so long as there is a learning element, I just get excited about this. I know it sounds very, very cheesy to say, but I am one of those people that gets bored quite quickly when I do rote stuff. For example, now I joined Inscribe and I'm having a great time because it's about solving some challenging problems, and yeah, it's amazing. But yeah, what comes next, I don't know. It's the same with my cards, the kind of stuff I do there. I don't want to repeat the same stuff over and over because, oh yeah, I've done this already. Let me learn and try to visualize democracy in the world and fail very badly and do something that it's extremely ugly and doesn't tell a story, and then just redo it. So for me, it's about the learning element, which for me, again, I think I've said this a few times, it's the most important element in working with data. It's about just challenging your own assumptions and just learn something new and fail, put it out. People will say, oh, this is not good, and that you learn something. So that's good.
Thank you very much. Have we got any other questions from the audience at all? Yes.
Thank you so much for your talks. Because both talks were saying that you don't need to be a genius to work in the data science field, so what would be your advice as the first step? So if someone is really interested into going into this field, what would be the first thing that they need to do?
Good question.
Yeah, you go for it.
Yeah. As I was saying, I think it's less about the toolings, especially at the early stage. The toolings will come, and it's more about having a good grip of the foundations. Again, I was lucky because the foundations, I've done it at uni, although at that time, data science wasn't a phrase. These days, there's lots of courses. There's lots of materials, however, that you can peruse for free. So I think, obviously, some coding. I will tend to recommend learn some easy Python to start with, because it's going to come in handy later, and the basics of stats. Stats is going to lead then into machine learning. If you want to go, very, very broad answer, but just try to make your foundations understood. And you will see that these days there's lots of tooling, even in AI, that in a few lines of code you're able to produce something that's quite surprising, and that's really good, and they're for free, and you can use machinery, software to run machine learning systems for free, which wasn't a thing even a few years ago. So very broad, but I have a list of stuff. Maybe if you're interested, I could show you. Like I maintain my own list of preferred stuff. So I could point you to that. But it's my opinion. That's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, I would also say figure out what it is that you want to do. Find either a topic that you find really interesting and that's got some data around that you can play with, or find a skill that you really enjoy seeing other people use, and try and develop that skill for yourself. One key thing I would say is that it's really helpful if you've got an online portfolio somehow of your work, and it doesn't have to be anything particularly complicated. It can be just a public GitHub repo where you can point people so that they can see the type of code that you write, the projects that you've worked on, and having a few kind of passion projects within that is really, really great. There's a book by an artist called Austin Kleon called Show Your Work, I love his stuff. I find it really, really helpful. And yeah, he talked, there's Steal Like an Artist, Show Your Work, and Keep Going, I think, are the three. Highly recommend those books. It's written from a creative side, but I found it helpful as somebody who kind of bridges that creative and tech world in terms of getting your stuff out there. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's about iterations. It's about learning from the feedback that you get from the community. And when you start out, you feel really vulnerable because you're really aware of the bits in your code that you just copy pasted that from Stack Exchange. You're not entirely sure why it works, but it works. We've all done it, and so you gradually learn. Okay, well that's why that works, and then you try and reuse it somewhere else, and it doesn't work, and you go and learn something new about that. But the more you try to create things and to put things out there, the quicker you'll learn. Rather than trying to do all the theory squirreled away in a box somewhere, just try and get stuff out there, and it will help.
Thank you so much. Great question. Have we got any other questions from the crowd? Oh, perfect. And then maybe I'll ask one myself.
Thank you so much for both talks. I really enjoyed them. I honestly just had a couple of questions really, but they are related. And it's how do you fight with the imposter syndrome, especially when it's so difficult to keep up with everything that is going on?
Yeah, I would say acknowledge it. So acknowledge that you will never keep up with everything. It's just not possible. But find the thing that you're really good at and keep developing that skill. So for me, one of the things that I want to try and get better at over the course of this year is making interactive plots. I can make them with R, and that's fine, but I want to learn other languages that help you do that in a way that is more flexible than building stuff in R and then building stuff on top of that, although that's actually quite a useful trick. I think, yeah, there's always stuff that's out there and you think, oh, I don't know anything about that. How can I possibly call myself a data scientist? Data science is really, really broad. Thinking back to the surgeons, there's a whole range of different types of surgeons, and you pick the surgeon that's right for the particular thing that needs to be operated on. You don't just go to any surgeon for that. So everybody specializes, and I think there's a fear that data science is talked about so broadly that we end up thinking that we need to know about everything, and we can't. So specialize in what you're excited about, and own it, and just know it's okay. I don't need to know about these things because I'm really good at this bit. And I think that should help.
Yeah, absolutely. Same. I was trying to play that game. Oh, I need to know everything. Having that kind of academic mentality initially of saying, oh, I need to study everything. It's just impossible. There's just too many people producing amazing stuff around. So I just sign up to a few newsletters that maybe summarize things for me, and that's helpful. But yeah, acknowledge that you can't know it all. You will never know it all. There's areas that you won't practice because maybe in your job you don't get to practice that kind of thing. But as someone was asking, what comes next? Find yourself the possibility to maybe get out of your comfort zone continuously and just try something new, if you so like. I mean, it doesn't have to be. If you like to go into depth. I'm personally a person I like breadth rather than depth. I like to do different things often at the same time. But if you want to specialize, just keep going. You become an expert into something. But yeah, just acknowledge that there's no way you're gonna keep up with everything, or try everything, or know it. But it's so long as you got your brain that knows the fundamentals and can understand the patterns, then you become faster at learning as well, which I still think is probably the most useful of human features, the ability to learn very quickly. So yeah. And fail. Do horrible graphs, fail. Yeah. Cara will say, this is horrible, you gotta
I really like your graphs. I think that's great.
I have not seen the bad ones.
No, well, that's okay. I've made some terrible ones in my own time. I would also say, learn fast and learn different things, but also make friends with people that work in totally different areas of data science to you. Because just in having conversations with them, you'll pick up on things that are exciting that you should maybe have a read up about, just so that you're aware of it. But also, I'm at an exciting stage where I'm getting to bring other people on to do projects with me. And I've got a friend, Crystal Lewis, who she just loves data cleaning. And whenever I say that to people, they're like, really? And it's one of those people, I'm so glad she exists, because we need people who love data cleaning. And she knows so much more about all the intricacies involved in getting that right than I do. And so it's great to have these friends who are specializing in different things. Whether that's specializing in different languages or different skills within the same language, you can't possibly know everything, even just within one language. But make friends with people who are excited about what they do and who will talk to you about it. Yeah.
Thank you. Some really good advice. I'm going to ask one final question, then we'll release you from your high stools. The quit is from me, really, and I didn't have this written down. It's just occurred to me now. If you were to go back, would you do anything differently career-wise, or are you comfortable with how you got to where you are? We'll ask Martina first, since Cara just finished talking.
No, I'm comfortable. I'm happy. I've got a pretty erratic career, someone will say, meaning I didn't do the typical maybe corporate growth. As I was saying, I mostly work with startups. That's probably the environment where I feel most comfortable. But it's been good to try the big company as well. But yeah, I'm really happy with what I've done, what I've learned, and stuff that didn't work along the way. So yeah, maybe I would just say, try to worry a little bit less. I used to be extremely worried. Oh, if this doesn't work amazingly, I'm not going to sleep. Still do that, but getting better at that. But yeah, wouldn't change much.
Yeah, no, I don't think I would change much either. I think it's one of those things I can see all the pieces of the puzzle falling into place as I look back on it, but I could never have predicted where I am now had I looked at it from the start going into the future. So I guess the lesson there is trust the process. Take the step that's the one that's just in front of you, and then it might lead to an adventure that goes in a different direction from what you had in mind. But no, I don't think I would change anything. I'm grateful for the things that I tried that didn't work out, and I'm grateful for where I am now.
Love it. Thank you so much. Can I give, yes.
One question online.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah, sure. Do you have it written down? Or? Oh, sure. I'll pass it over. Sorry, are you okay for one more question?
Yeah.
Apologies, sorry.
What helps? God, I can hear myself. What helps to develop skills in designing unusual visualizations using ggplot2?
Yep, that's probably one for me. One thing that really helped me was discovering the Tidy Tuesday community on Twitter. Now, Twitter is a very different place now to the place that it was 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
But find people who are doing the types of visualizations that you want to create and ask them how they did it. If they're not sharing the code behind them, which most of us do actually, if they're not sharing the code, I'm sure they'll be able to give you some advice on that. My website's got a bunch of talks with ggplot specific skills in them, a couple of workshops there. But there are so many tools out there. I think the thing that really accelerated my learning, honestly, was seeing what other people were doing. And my mind was completely blown by, can you do this in ggplot? That's just crazy. And then I thought, actually, they've shared the code of how they've done it. So I went and had a look and copied across the things that were the solutions that I was missing. And then just continued to build on that. And getting involved in Tidy Tuesday was great because it was a regular activity. And also it was data sets where you can't really put your foot in it. It was, ratings in a coffee competition, or how many penguins are on each island, or, it was stuff that there was no political faux pas that you were going to make, and nobody was going to make any really big life decisions based on a plot that you made. So yeah, I think that would probably be the advice. It would be find a community where people are doing that, to get involved, ask questions, and share your stuff online and get feedback and ask people how to improve it. But also stay away from data that people might actually make a life decision on. I think when we went through COVID, there were so many people practicing their skills on COVID data in ways that were actually really quite unhelpful. Yeah. And there can be a tendency to think, I can do data, therefore I can do everybody's job. And that's just such an arrogant position. There are people who are specialists in their own field, and we need to respect that. The tools that we have are tools, but they don't replace expertise. And so stay away from data like that, but practice as much as you can on creating fun things with data that doesn't matter, like the bake-off package. Yeah, that's a good one to try.
It's amazing.
Did you want to answer?
Yeah, no, just a sign on that. There were lots of people, even academic people, trying to start them becoming experts in virology or public health. So that's not something, maybe in good faith, but it's not a good way to approach things. Because again, domain expertise matters. Data doesn't have all the answers. You need domain expertise. In fact, for a successful project to work very well at work, or in your side projects or whatever, talk to the humans. You might learn something that you don't know and that you might not see in the data. So that's super important. That's why humans are still very important. We're not going to be replaced anytime soon, I think.
Thank you. Thank you for the online question as well. That was a nice wee add-on in the end. And I did promise I'd let you go. So if you could give a round of applause to our speakers. Thank you so much. Thank you.